Hi, I am the teenager, the senior teenager. And no, I don't call myself a teenager because I want to be young. I call myself a teenager because I have a deep, deep sense of empathy with the young. And I have to confess that it was not always so. In fact, this empathy was something that came to me in 2013. There were two incidents in my life, one personal and the other in my husband's professional life. And I tell you, these two incidents threw me completely off gear. They hit me here, between the eyes. I was shaken to the core. That was the first time I realized that something right under my nose was going on, taking shape, and I wasn't seeing it. Not just me, it was happening under the noses of everybody around me. We were just not able to see what was going on. And that was when I began to notice, see better, try and listen more. I started reading books, I started watching movies, I began to talk to a lot of people, parents, teachers, youngsters. What is going on? And you should ask me, well, what in the heavens was going on? Well, I was seeing young people, teenagers, children, young adults who had everything going for them, but they would not come to, for instance, the family dining table. Some of them would shut themselves off in their rooms. Some of them didn't want to take calls to their aunts and uncles. And surprisingly, some of them did not want to come on a family holiday, ultra sensitive. I found that more and more the adults in their lives were having to bite their tongues or walk on eggshells around them. They were scared of approaching their teenagers. There would be temper tantrums. There would be withdrawals. There would be rejections. There would be this distancing. Conversations just refused to happen. What was the name for this phenomena? I didn't remember experiencing any of this when I was growing up. And as I began to learn and see and understand, the entire jigsaw puzzle began to fit. And the word for it was anxiety. Probably at their age, I didn't even know the spelling of this word. There was this deep-seated fear, anxiousness, conflict, self-doubt, low self-esteem, despite everything the society, schools, parents, organizations, companies, despite everything they were doing to lift the self-esteem. We were all the time talking about self-esteem, about reassuring them that you're fine, and despite that, there was this deep-seated anxiety. And that anxiety came across in questions like these. Am I good enough? Am I doing everything I need to be doing? Do people like me? Am I loved? And the most heartbreaking of all, am I even lovable? This is what we are going to talk about today. However, let me start by admitting that anxiety is such a huge subject. I think it would serve us all the best to keep ourselves limited to only one aspect of anxiety, and that is acknowledgement. I do believe that the solution to every problem, and you will all agree with me, starts with an acknowledgement. So let's talk just about acknowledging, because I know enough and more people around me who say, what's the big deal? What are they anxious about? Haven't we given them everything? We provide for them, we feed them, we are there standing, behind the curtains, We jump in when they need us. What are they anxious about? What have they got to worry about? They are pearls and the world is the oyster. All they need to do is flourish and bloom. Singular lack of acknowledgement, and believe you me, it is leading to disastrous consequences. I speak not hypothetically or theoretically, I speak from first-hand experience. Now, before we go any further, a couple of things. I've switched off my fan and my AC because of the voice, so please pardon me if I begin to sweat a little, and I just wanted all of you to see my beautiful eyes. And now I'm going to put on my glasses. I'll keep taking them off so that you see my lovely eyes. I take after my grandmother. She had beautiful eyes. I want to be able to look into your eyes through this camera here. So now my glasses are on. I say this, talk about anxiety with a deep sense of responsibility and accountability. I have a concern. My concern is there anxiety because we talk a lot about it, or are we talking because there is anxiety? What came first? Did the chicken come first or the egg come first? That always bothers me, because you will agree that today, if you are suffering a stomach ache and you go online to do some surfing, you're going to come away with this conviction that you are suffering from colon cancer. It is true that a lot of children are going online, looking up their symptoms and giving themselves a diagnosis. And 2 days ago, I was talking to two very brilliant Zoomers, Anya and Manya, and they were of the same opinion. A lot of their friends are doing their own digging and arriving at certain conclusions. However, we can be sure that anxiety exists. The proof is there. Talk to a counselor in any school today. Go to the waiting room of any therapist. Go to a pharmacy. Talk to the pharmacist there. There are medications, protocols for young people today. There are therapists who are talking in detail. There are parents who are calling up therapist offices, crying, crisis at home, crisis at home. Anxiety exists. It can take the form of a pain in the body, a stomach pain, a headache. It can take the form of a young child saying he or she doesn't want to go to school. It can take the shape of crying or depression or lack of motivation or no interest, lack of interest in all the normal things that a young person usually is excited about. Anxiety surfaces in all these forms. Now, you should ask this question, and it comes up frequently. What is that which causes children anxiety? What is causing young people anxiety? See, one is, of course, there is an anxiety of hyper competitiveness around them. Parents are telling young people that it's a hugely competitive world out there. Dog eat dog. You have to be prepared. So that is one form of anxiety. Then there are huge amounts of comparisons. When you and I'm talking to the generation sitting there across who's my age, let's say boomers or the Gen X, when we were growing up, we had no awareness of what was happening with our young friends. We would go to their house for not even barely an hour or so and come back quickly home. There were no comparisons. We were in our cocoon. The only people around us were our parents. Today, the youngsters sit under a waterfall of information. They are under constant assault. There is an onslaught. There is bad news about the climate. There is bad news about terrorism. There is bad news about rapes. There is bad news about the insecurity in the public spaces. There is bad news of corruption. There are bad news of bankruptcies. There are bad news of murders, cheating, all kinds of horrifying school shootings. Fortunately, not in India yet, but in United States. These make them very anxious. They don't know what to expect. And this lack of faith, this lack of trust in what used to look very solid to us in our age, let's say the parents or the institutions, the governments, the heads of governments, this lack of trust in all of these makes them very anxious. And you don't need to go too far to see what this anxiety leads to. Go online, look up Greta Thunberg, watch her addressing the European Parliament, and she begins by saying, it's heartbreaking, as she says, I'm Greta Thunberg, I'm 16 years old, I'm from Sweden, and I want you to panic. Imagine a teenager telling a hall full of world leaders, telling them that I want you to panic. It's a cry of desperation. It's a cry for help. It's a cry for understanding. It's a cry for reassurance. Tell us that the world will be okay. Tell us that you understand where we are coming from. What are the youngsters, the Zoomers, the millennials telling us? Don't judge us. Don't criticize us. Don't vilify us. Don't throw bullshit at us. Please look at us. See us. See us. See us. Don't just look at us. See us. Don't just hear us. Listen to us. Listen to us. You and I, and this is something that comes from deep within my heart, you and I really need to stop talking and start listening now. Now, the anxiety, as we just discussed, is anxiety about the future. And surprisingly, there is an existential angst amongst the young people today, among Zoomers. Surprising. They're thinking about life. They're thinking of what life means. They're thinking of where they are going, what their future is going to look like. I know of a Zoomer who lies awake at night worrying about her family, about her dogs, about a father who's absent, who's away on work out of town. I know of a Zoomer who in 48 hours has slept only 5 hours. I know a Zoomer who's up at night worrying if she is being productive enough. Do you remember ever doing that? There's another youngster who's up at night talking to her peer on the phone, trying to prevent that person from self-harm. That person is crying, howling, desperate, saying they don't want to live anymore. They don't know what to live for. They don't see anything to look forward to. And they just want to go. A kind of a quasi-suicidal ideation. And the young people up at night talking to each other. Do we know that? Do we realize that? So these are young people in pain. And that pain comes out in the form of anxiety. And what you and I need to do for them is express empathy. Now, I started out as a teacher. I've been a journalist. I've been a TV production person. I was involved in documentary filmmaking with the award-winning documentary filmmaker Meera Diwan. I've done all of this. I've been an advertising person, but today, my role is that of a professional speaker, and my chosen niche topic is generational empathy. This is something that moves me as nothing else. I do believe that it is our mandate today. All adults, anyone in whose care the young are today, it's our mandate to invest in them, and not just our children, invest in the young and leave a world which is better for them. Leave a world where they can prosper, where they can thrive. That is our mandate. Now, when I was talking to my two Zoomer friends, I realized that at the time I was talking to them, I was also writing my book. I've recently written a book on generational empathy, and I'm now working on my second one. At the time I was talking to my two Zoomer friends, my book was in the pre-publishing stage and I was going through that final document, and I had given it a title of Generational Empathy. After talking to my Zoomer friends, I changed the title. I called it No Time to Be Young. There's a bit of a pun there. One, these are no times to be young. These are very difficult times to be young. And the other is they literally have no time to be young. You might think when they look like they're pub crawling or they're sitting in a cafe or consuming or they're having, fun, that's not really so. It's not. These children are under immense pressures and from multiple sources. It's not that you and I or the people in authority over them are telling them to put pressure, not necessarily. A lot of their pressure comes from inside. It is driven by the environment that rewards accomplishment, that rewards brilliance, that is made up of celebrities, youngsters, 13, 14, 15 becoming insta famous. What does it make everybody, the rest of them feel? Oh, this person is famous, I'm not good enough. These are the kind of pressures that you and I have not experienced. So that is something to keep in mind of all the pressures that they are under. Now, another thing that makes them a little more vulnerable than us. See, we had clear milestones. There was a time I went to college, I got married by 23 and a half, by 25, 26, 27, I had my children. And all this was giving me stability. It was giving me a sense of confidence. It was giving me a sense of wholesomeness. I had access to the community that my husband brought to me professionally. We were two partners. There were roles that were clearly defined. There was some kind of a certainty in our lives. Young people do look at us and say, oh, you just compromised and you didn't have a life. But actually, that life gave us stability. The young people today, even at the age of 26, 27, 28, 29, they're still not launching. And I have to remind you that when we talk of teenage anxiety, we don't necessarily mean 13 to 19. No. World Health Organization has mandated, in fact, it's official, that teenage today extends from age 10. They say 10, I would put it at 9 now. Begins at 10 and can continue up to 24. It is an extended adolescence. Children, young people are experiencing what they call quarter life crisis at 25. At 25, you want to wipe the slate of everything that you've done and you want to start all over again. That's the kind of situation, that's the kind of lack of certainty, that's the kind of wishy-washy, fearful, uncertain. There is an environment of entrepreneurship, again, a lonely and an uncertain road. There is an environment when young people are getting into relationships, again, very stressful. Emotional rejection can leave them with broken hearts. There are all these environments that add to their anxiety. That is one point I wanted to make. Now we have half an hour today and we are through, I see, almost 20 minutes perhaps. And there I am sweating. Please excuse me. I'll take a minute to look if there are. I had kept the last 20 minutes for questions. So I don't see any questions here. Let me continue with the next point I wanted to make to all of you. See, the main thing today these children are struggling with is the lack of resilience. Why do they lack resilience? Again, parents like us who are there ready to save them from the consequences of their actions. It happens all the time. You want to fix everything from them. They are in some kind of an uncomfortable situation. You quickly want to make it comfortable for them. You don't let them cope with the frustration, with the anguish of losing. We don't let them give them space enough to get their act together. And that is what leads them to the stage where they don't have the resilience to put up with the difficulties that lives are invariably going to throw at them. Life is not what they see in schools. Life is not what they see in colleges. Life is not what they read about, what they see in the movies. We all know that. Now, when I was bringing up my children, I was under the impression that it was just two parents who were bringing them up. Imagine my surprise when after 10, 15 years, I realized that my children actually had been brought up by 4 parents, not 2. The other 2 parents were the internet, the third one, and the fourth one were their peers. Our children are being brought up by the internet to a large extent. YouTube is a mentor for many young people. There are other components of their lives. For instance, the therapist, the counselor, all these are part of the environment that did not exist before. We had uncles and aunts, maybe a cousin to absorb our anxieties, maybe some other adult in our lives that we could go to. But with nuclear families today, both parents working, children are pretty much at a loss when they're feeling low about their lives. And it happens more often than not. Another phenomena that goes on is, I will call it, in fact, my friends Manya and Anya, my 2 brilliant Zoomers, I just want to check on the phone if there's any message from my host, because I don't see any questions here. I hope I'm logged on right. Okay, now, remember what I told you about sweating? Okay, now, my young Zoomer friends told me about Sharma ji ka beta. You know what happens with Sharma ji ka beta? अरे तुम्हारे इतने नंबर आए लेकिन शर्मा जी के बेटे के तो इतने आए, तुमको तुम्हारी तनख्वाह इतनी है लेकिन शर्मा जी के बेटे की तो इतनी है. There is again this constant comparison, and that is what causes half the problems. We really need to do something about this. Any questions from anywhere? I'm a little foxed with this. I don't see what is going on. So what we essentially need to do, now that we've established that there is indeed anxiety, really what the role of an adult or a parent today is to be a container for that anxiety, to be a safe space. You don't need to solve the young people's problems. The young people already know the answers. They have the solutions. They have the capacity to work it out. And if they want any information, there are enough and more resources out there. What you need to do is to contain the anxiety. And how do you do that? You form a circle around the young person. And that circle could be the 2 parents, the grandparents, some trusted friends, a coach, a cousin, a senior, a school senior, people you trust. And let the youngster thrash around within that circle. It's important for them to work it out themselves. So provide that circle, share it. It is not a reflection on your parenting. You've been a good parent. I just shared with you that you alone are not responsible today. There are other factors parenting the young people. There are other factors nurturing and influencing the young people. So you don't hide this fact. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. Don't turn a blind eye. Don't shut your ears. Take your blinkers off. Look it in the face. Acknowledge, yes, this child is anxious. This child needs help. I don't have the tools to help my child, but I can facilitate help for my child. I can share it with the environment. I can make it possible. It could involve therapy. So the thing is to normalize this now. Let children speak. Let it be normal. Let it be acceptable. Because shame or sitting over it or hiding it only makes it more stressful. It leads to even further problems, and those problems can then escalate and lead to some kind of mental stress. There are families in which there is alienation happening today, And in extreme cases, there could be loss of life just because there wasn't enough communication. So, number one, that safe circle for the child, for the young person. And that will happen only when you acknowledge and share and voice and seek help. The second most important thing is I cannot stress this enough, be a safe space for your own children and the other young around you. Be a safe space for them. Let them come to you with confidence, with trust. Let them come to you knowing that they'll be heard. Let them feel light in your presence. Let them feel reassured in your presence. Be a safe space. Don't break their trust. Don't judge them. Don't vilify them. Don't direct bullshit at them. These children have very finely tuned radars. They can sense bullshit. They can sense insincerity. They are far more evolved, the young today, far more evolved than my generation ever was. That is something we really need to remember. In fact, I am of the firm belief that now is the time to put these young people in positions of experts, on panels of experts, and start listening to them, because this generation has seen more diversity than any before. They have less compartments in their minds. They are more accepting of others. They are more inclusive. They are more fair. They are more inclined to get into activism and ensure that everybody gets their fair share. They are not as selfish and as self-absorbed as we were. In fact, it is the Zoomers who are going to be the renewalists of tomorrow. They are the ones who are going to revive, renew the earth, renew human life. They have a lot to deal with, and therefore the anxiety. My call to action to all of you listening there is one. This is my subject, this is my interest. I would love to speak to young people. I would love to speak to those of you who like to engage with the subject. I believe it's a universal subject of great importance to all of us. I would love for you to join me. I'm running weekly sessions on generational sympathy. I would like more young people to come forward, more adults to come forward and speak about these subjects that don't get spoken about enough. I think I've come to the end of my time and I need to finish